Simple. Waiting for people to join. Okay. Given that we only have, call it an hour, I think it might be good to kick off. The way that this is going to run today is, sorry, I just need to set up this. Okay. I made a mistake. No, there we go. Okay. Oh, hello, welcome everybody. Super excited to have everybody here. Can everybody see my screen? Fantastic. Okay, for those of you who don't know us, my name is Claire. I am an associate at Blackbird. I also have the pleasure of doing a lot of the sort of on-the-ground work to run Foundry. I'm joined today by Michael Tolo, who is a general partner at Blackbird, who is he does a lot of our deep tech investing. He really runs our deep tech practice and works with such amazing companies as PsiQuantum, Andromeda Robotics, Opto Biosystems, Vexev, and a number of others who are absolutely pivotal to the Foundry program. Now, the purpose of this session today is to run us through a bit of a Q&A, open up the floor to any questions that you might have. The questions, I'm going to throw in a Slido link in a moment, but you can pop your questions into the chat or into that Slido link when it comes through. Before we get there, I'm just going to run through a couple of slides to, I guess, set the table for what we're doing here today and what Foundry is. So Foundry is Blackbird's pre-accelerator program for deep tech, for people who are in science or engineering positions, whether they're at research institutions or universities or companies who have a bit of curiosity about starting a company and who maybe have the very beginning of an idea, but don't really know where to go with it and aren't sure that they want to go deep into it. Or for those who are pretty sure that they want to give starting a company a good crack in frontier tech, but again, aren't super sure where to start. This is meant to be the launch pad for you. And in a bigger picture, we created Foundry a couple of years ago to empower scientists and engineers to actually raise the bar for frontier tech in Australia. So Michael came back from America after working at a deep tech venture capital fund there and felt that there was, or looked around and noticed that there was a real lack of the strong ambition and I guess wildest ideas and facilitation for those that you would see on the ground on the west coast of the US. But no lack of talent. We have the most incredible scientists and engineers in Australia, but for some reason we just don't see that translating into really interesting, fantastic companies, ideas, technologies that can go on to change the world. And so Foundry exists really to change that narrative. If I can get my Canva to work. There we go. And as part of that, we have determined where we exist in this ecosystem. We have some really strong beliefs about scientists starting companies that we've expressed in a document that we wrote that may have caused a bit of a rumble in some spaces. Foundry and Blackbird are about founders. We think that there are really high potential founders, people who can start really awesome companies in our research institutions. We think that they can do incredible things. We're super excited for the things that they can do. We're not a program that indexes on intellectual property, and we're not a fund that indexes on intellectual property. We care a lot more about the ideas and that the people who are bringing those into reality than we do about IP. And we care a lot about the way that those people are compensated. So if you're starting a company, we believe that you should have majority, significantly more than majority ownership over that company. We believe that the journey ahead of you is going to be one that is super exciting and super ambitious, that you should be encouraged to the very best version of that. But we kind of sit in this space of believing in really founder-led companies that sees, I guess, the full difficulty of the thing with both hands, and come up with the best way to attack that. And Foundry exists within that to make that happen, to bring that narrative in full force to founders in research institutions in Australia, but also to provide the support and the quality of support, mentorship, advice, and capital to be able to do that. And that's what we've done over the past 2 cohorts. So we actually started Foundry in 2021. And in the past couple of years, we've run 2 cohorts. The first was called Wild Futures. That was just branded very differently. But last year was our first true Foundry cohort, focusing really on PhD students and EMCRs. We've had 21 teams so far. Those 21 teams, about half of them, I would say at this point, have gone on to raise millions in VC funding. We continue to see rounds coming through from Foundry participants and Wild Futures participants. The 2023 cohort, and they've also gone on to really specialist accelerators that have helped them to speed up their journeys, whether they were headhunted by Y Combinator or whether they were made their way into fantastic programs like Mass Robotics Specialist Program. Foundry has given them a really great platform to do that. And then in 2023, the most recent cohort that we ran, we had 10 teams. I'm going to talk you through them to show you how, I guess, varied our teams are, and really the breadth of things that we're looking for. But that cohort was fantastic. So 75% of them, we had really, really strong recommendations. 50% were women-led, 100% were more ambitious and had more clarity over what they wanted. And we're still starting to see the fruits of that in terms of funding and in terms of people really starting companies and going full-time on those. The testimonials from our existing participants were really, really strong. The untold story in Foundry is also the relationships that those people have built, ongoing friendships, deep relationships, things that have continued well past the program, whether it's between mentors and participants or between participants themselves. The structure of Foundry is super simple. We're going to have a cohort of up to 10 teams. We will have a smaller cohort if we need to. We optimize for quality. So we select only those who are at the bar. And if we don't have enough to meet the bar, then we don't do that size of cohort. We will do a smaller cohort. We're absolutely religious about it. We match them with 10 world-class founders and operators from our network. So one of the really distinguishing features of Foundry is that you only get matched with people who are actually building things, who are actually experienced, who are actually doing the best thing in the world. Our mentors are really our secret weapon, and we pair them very purposefully to different teams. Everyone has the experience in deep and biotech, and they have the networks that can be leveraged. Mentors have gone on to be formal advisors for companies. So Sibi Pulikaseral, who is a founder within the Blackbird portfolio, is a really great example of this. He's a formal advisor for Kite Magnetics and for Andromeda Robotics from the first cohort, and has built those relationships over many years now that were started in Foundry. We're also ruthless in selecting and engaging the best mentors. They need to be engaged and experienced. And I find myself firing mentors every single cohort so far. It's not a joy, but it is a necessity. So we're as religious about the quality of our mentors and our supports and our speakers as we are about the cohort themselves. The structure of the program itself, 8 weeks. we call it an intensive, but it is designed to work alongside your PhD studies or your postdoc. We ask for at least 4 hours per week. That's usually outside of work time, to focus and spend some time on this idea of building a company, whether it's a biotech or a deep tech startup. Those 4 hours per week look like a seminar. So that seminar this year is probably going to be about 2 hours. There is a fine-tuned curriculum, but it's fairly lightweight. It focuses on a set of questions that you need to answer and time that you need to spend with yourself and your team. And then fortnightly cohort dinners, because we believe that the cultural aspect of this, putting you in a room with people who are as creative and ambitious and big thinking as you are, is going to be the really important thing. The seminars are really valuable times. We schedule some of them in advance, and we take your advice and guidance on what you want to hear for some of them. And we go out of our way to find sort of, who is the ideal, who would you love to spend just a couple of hours asking questions of and getting the best advice possible from anywhere in the world. One of the great strengths of Blackbird as a venture capital fund in Australia is we really do think that we can probably get access to anybody. And so we try to leverage that as much as possible for Foundry in the most valuable way possible. I'm going to quickly run you through the last cohort to show you that sort of the breadth that we've got going on here. We really do span everything from hardware and like deep quantum sides of things and photonics, which is, I think, where Blackbird really cut its teeth, right through to biotech and that more traditional life sciences side of things. So last year's cohort, you could split quite cleanly into 2 groups. We had this sort of hardware, AI, and compute side of things, and we had everything from got kind of the quantum folks on the left here, everything from like hardware based on studies of gravitational waves and dark matter to it was based on dark matter. Jeremy and Emma had designed a dark matter detector that turned out it actually could separate mirror image molecules, so chiral molecules in bulk, which is a huge industrial problem. It's a really interesting situation. We had post-quantum cryptography. We had Iceberg with commercializing LDPC, quantum error correction codes. We had Michael with an AGI play, which was really fascinating, and Nick designing new neuromorphic or hybrid neuromorphic architectures and figuring out how to actually commercialize those. So the hardware itself spans a number of different areas, and there's really nothing that we would be like scared of. And then within health and biotech, we also had this really interesting array of people. We had everything from your sort of AI for diagnostic side of things with Preview and with Graft. Graft ended up winning last year, through to your, I guess, more in silico modeling with Cell Bauhaus and with RiboPros, targeting really different sides of biotech modeling, right through to your really traditional life sciences with Intrixa, with Samira figuring out how to actually build a true life sciences platform, targeting cell and tissue composition for highly targeted drug discovery or delivery, focusing on endometriosis as a first port of call. Again, huge amount of breadth, and we're enabled to, like, we can target this amount of breadth because we have a really fantastic set of speakers and mentors and a really fantastic, really genuine, I think, platform of people that allow us to do what we do. So this is a selection of some of the people who, just for last cohort, who mentored and spoke. Not shown here is Michael, who's going to help answer some questions, who also mentors and spends a lot of time doing that. But you'll see from this, whether they're Blackbird founders or operators that we know, or people in our network who we just think are awesome, we really do bring in, I would say, the best in the world when it comes to building deep tech. So that's it from me, right? I've spoken for a quarter of the time that we have here. And I had a thing that said, any questions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I think we're going to pass over into some questions. And I have some for us as well that I'd like us to answer, Michael.
Sure.
So let me pull up my own questions. I said I was going to throw a Slido link in there, but I think that we can actually just keep to the Zoom chat questions. So why don't we start with the one that we've got up there? Actually, first of all, Michael, do you have any points that you would like to add to that?
I think very much the philosophy behind Foundry is how do we create an open door into the world of venture capital and venture funded startups to really help all of the brightest, most talented early career researchers understand the scope of what's possible. I think as we went through the discovery process, there were many examples where we found folks self-selecting out of the startup journey on the basis of the grand idea that they had conceived might require $100 million of capital to reach market, or several $100 million, or had unretired technical risk. And I suppose the whole purpose of this program is to say, that there is a group of people who will believe in you at the beginning to bring exactly those projects to life. And we think about fundraising as, essentially a solvable variable. We have with many companies, raised in excess of, $100 million. And so how do we start right at the beginning, chart a path, chart a set of technical and commercial milestones, and how do we kind of explain based on our experience as funders and have our founders who have, charted that course themselves, explain their own experience, so you can spend your time making new mistakes rather than repeating mistakes of the past. Is kind of the set the scene philosophy for why we began this.
I think that's really well put, and I think this idea of unretired technical risk is a really important thing. So a lot of the questions that I've been receiving via LinkedIn or via email have been around this idea of like, do I need intellectual property? What TRL do I need to be? Is it ever too early? I have like the very beginning of an idea. And the answer is like always, basically, it's never too early. And we're always happy to have a chat. First of all, our door is always open. But the point of Foundry is to occupy that very like high risk, very person focused, very raw idea exploratory phase. So yeah, it's good. It's a program that I love.
To be even more explicit, we expect TRL level 0 generally.
Well,
maybe not 0, but if you feel like you're at TRL level 0, you shouldn't discount yourself from applying.
Yeah, you shouldn't discount yourself. TRLs don't work so much like that, but you shouldn't discount yourself. Let's jump into questions. So let's jump here. Is the cohort open only for Australians or companies based in Australia?
We're open for any company or any application with an Australian connection. So if you're not an Australian, but you're working at an Australian research institution or academic institution, that's totally fine. If you're an Aussie or Kiwi expat, in the US or in the UK, that is also fine. But yes, certainly it's not just for Australians, it's for anyone that's part of our ecosystem.
What if someone's not an Australian, they've spent some time in Australia for a postdoc or something, and now they're back overseas? Where do we draw the line?
I mean, you tell me. I think that's a strong Australian connection from my perspective, a meaningful portion of their academic journey undertaken, at one of our research institutions or universities.
Yep, I would say that that's true. I would say that we play pretty fast and loose with the connection piece, and we're pretty flexible on that. I would say if you don't have a connection or nobody on your team has a connection to Australia or New Zealand, I would say reach out, let's have a chat. We'll see. Again, we optimize for quality, so we are open to exceptions. You definitely don't have to be based in Australia, though. That's the important thing there. Okay, that one's done. Michael, are recent PhD graduates eligible for the Foundry program, or do you still need to be enrolled with a university? Do you need a research institution link?
You don't need to be currently enrolled. I think recently completed, recently submitted is more than fine.
Easy. Perfect. Okay. Do we accept solo founders? Yes, we
Absolutely.
absolutely do. The journey is more fun with a friend. I will promise you that. And I think you get more out of it as a small team. But we certainly do accept solo founders. That one's easy. What's the selection process, and do we need to send proposals? Yes. Okay, so the selection process is designed to be fairly lightweight, and we run it fairly quickly. So applications are open now and they close Friday week at 11:59 p.m. If you're late to that, depending on how I'm feeling it the next day, we will or will not accept those applications. I wouldn't bank on it. We've been quite strict in the past. The selection process is simple, as I said. So you answer 4 questions and you submit some papers, background information for us to upskill. We're quite quick on our analysis and getting sort of from that 0 to 1 on a new area. So you shouldn't be afraid to scare us with those. The application questions are really clear. There's sort of sub-questions within them. They focus on who you are, what you're doing, why you think it's important, and why you think the world will be a better place for it, what the world looks like in 10 years' time. And if you read between the lines just a little bit, you'll be able to understand what we're looking for with those. Again, we've been pretty clear. Finally, we run a single round selection process. So we will have selection done within the week, and applicants will know within a week of the closing date whether or not they've made the cohort. You're welcome to ask for feedback during the selection process, so during the application window, and I will endeavour to give that to you. But that's that. The place that you send proposals to is on our website, which is just going to be blackbird.vc/foundry. You can type it properly. Just there. Okay. Okay. What are the expectations of teams by the end of the program? Is there a required TRL level, MVP stage, or IP coverage by the end of the program? It's a really, really good question. So teams set goals at the beginning of the program as to what they want to achieve by the end of the program. Our setup is super simple. We believe that you should have clarity and be able to express a vision and a mission really clearly, and you should have the beginning of, call it an 18-month de-risking roadmap. That's it. That's what we care about. The thing that you have to deliver, there are 2 things that absolutely have to be delivered. One is what's called a river of inquiry into the area that you're in that shows the, I guess, the background development of your thesis about the company that you're building and the market that you're in, based on the research that you've done, the customer research and also the desktop research. The second thing that you have to deliver, that's just delivered internally, and that's an absolute requirement to be eligible for the 5K cash prize at the end. The second thing then that you have to deliver is participation in this pitch or competition day, which is hosted in front of a couple of hundred people, including investors and people who are building companies, and is judged by people who are operators and investors and founders. And that requires that you deliver a short pitch that is at a standard. We do a lot of work with you that we think is at a standard that reflects like a strong pre-seed pitch, basically. But again, there's no requirement on TRL, MVP, or IP coverage by the end of the program. We're not super interested in that. This is more about the company side of things, the formation side of things, the storytelling, the strategy, the planning, and all of the skills that come into being a really great founder. It's about developing those. And also the network, a really, really important part of it. think we've answered Adelaide. What if you're an Australian citizen but working at a US university? Absolutely eligible to apply, please do. We will work around time zones. Again, because the program is so bespoke, because the cohorts are so varied, and we focus so much on the people, we do a lot of work to make sure that we accommodate every participant, and we can do that because we keep it nice and small and pretty selective. And so we'll accommodate time zones and people and all of that. Last cohort, half of the cohort ended up in WA. Somehow, don't know what the University of Western Australia did, but as part of that, I flew out and spent some time with everybody, and we had a really nice dinner and did some work there all together, and that was really fantastic. So we do try to make things work. Okay, here's one. Does Foundry help the teams form the company and work through the legal with the team? Tolo.
So we won't do that directly. I think in the last cohort we did have a session presented by a lawyer within our network to kind of help provide a sense for the guardrails, generally how you might go about engaging a lawyer to do that with you. But in short, it's not a core part of the program. It's something that you have to commit to and continue on with after the program, which obviously we hope you do.
We do have, so last time, to be really explicit, we had a session with some lawyers in our network who spoke broadly about IP and answered some more general questions. And then we also had office hours open and available with a couple of lawyers that we really like and trust, a top tier law firm who volunteered some of their time and who have gone on to work with a couple of those companies. But that becomes sort of the on the part of the company. We can talk through that in more detail if we need to. Super quick question. Are we also open to recent master's graduates or only for PhD graduates? The broad answer to all of these questions and the basic assumption to make is we're open to everything. We have a preference for people in STEM who are researchers. That's who this program is designed for. But we, by the nature of being VCs, we love outliers and we love exceptions to the rules. And so we're open to everything. Recent master's graduates are fantastic. Absolutely. What you need to have is the beginning of an idea and a real passion for what you're doing. That's it. You don't have to be, someone's asking here if we have to be tied to an existing university project, or can it be a research project that you're doing outside of university? Absolutely can be something that you're doing outside of university. It doesn't have to be tied to what you've already done, and it doesn't have to be tied to what you're about to do. It can be something that you're really interested in, that you want to flesh out more and want to spend some time on.
Yeah, I think we particularly love that. So, we think of it as, net new ideas, recognizing that you might have a wide range of domain expertise, but, for example, you might be working on a grant-funded research program that doesn't allow you to explore that precise idea or hypothesis you have, but you feel really deeply about it. In many senses, that is exactly what this program is for, to give you the space to explore it, and then decide whether you want to independently pursue that line of inquiry.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. It's always funny when there are questions that are like, I saw this thing, or I've heard this, and you're like, I don't know where that's come from, but we'll answer it when we get to it. So how do the dinners work and the in-person elements work if you're in different states? So this is a really fantastic question. Foundry is by nature a hybrid program. Whenever there are groups that are concentrated in particular states or particular cities, we host the in-person events. So last year it was that we hosted in Perth, and we hosted in Sydney, and the Perth dinners were organised and hosted by the people over there. There wasn't somebody on the ground facilitating them or anything, and the Sydney ones were hosted by me in Sydney. We also had a participant in each of Brisbane and Melbourne, and they didn't participate in the dinners because there weren't enough people on the ground to make that worthwhile. For the end of cohort dinner and for the end of cohort event, we try our best to make sure that everybody can be sort of in the same place and try to schedule it around that. But we the core of the program is really in that hybrid take and hybrid approach. So if you're not in a state where there are enough people to kind of host a dinner where it would just be you, there isn't a dinner. We don't pay you to go out for dinner on your own. Which was a legitimate ask last year was, could we do that? And I was like, no, I don't, that's not really the point. Another fantastic question, do we accept applications from more mature university spinouts? Do we actually we're talking about, early TRL, things being a bit wild. I don't think, the point is the TRL is not a good, representation of what we're talking about here. But down that stage a little bit, are we also interested in those more mature companies, Toller?
I think we don't exclude anything, but again, the program is designed for, folks right at the very beginning of their journey, which, for example, might be the case even if the underlying technology is, deemed a little more mature, but the process of thinking about the spin out is right at the very beginning. So again, we don't care too much about the state of the underlying technology. It's more about, where you're at in your journey of forming the company. So nothing is excluded. We would encourage you to apply, and we'll review the application, in the ordinary course.
I think you have to think about what value you're going to get out of it as well, right? While Foundry is a really fantastic platform to other things, it itself is valuable if you need work. You need to do the work on, first of all, developing yourself as a founder at those really early stages, kind of dipping your toes in the water and getting a feel for it. If you need to work on developing a really clear mission and vision and developing a clear roadmap, technical and product over the next sort of 18 months, that's where we really shine. That's what we're here for. And if you feel as a researcher or as an early career researcher, PhD student, master's student, whoever, that you would benefit from being around a group of people who are going to kind of kick you up the butt a little bit and be really ambitious and put you in that environment, if you would benefit from that in a really meaningful way, that's what Foundry is for. We're not a program that, there's no guaranteed venture funding out the back of it. There's no, we don't get into the nitty gritty of moving up TRLs and everything like that. We're a very early stage program. So it's up to you to decide whether or not that's a thing that's really valuable to you. I'm going to run through a couple of these questions super quick, just do some quick fire. Someone here, I saw from last year's application that a nominator was required. Is this still the case this year? There's never been a nominator required. We had an opportunity open. We still have it open for if you want to nominate people so that we can get in touch with them and encourage them to apply. But there's no nominators required. The only other thing that this could be referring to, I think, is we have sort of a canonical structure for a Foundry team, which is where you have sort of a PhD student leading it or an early postdoc or fellow leading the team and is actually participating in the program, and they're supported by their supervisor or by someone more senior or a team of more senior academics. 2 to 3 PhD students and a couple of academics who sort of sit back and learn by proxy. But once again, that's not a nominator situation. That's nothing like that. And that's not a requirement. That's just something that we've seen work in the past and gives you an idea of sort of what we are broadly thinking about. How big can your team be? Your team, look, there are maximum sizes that are useful, right? The reality is that 1 or 2 of you will actually be participating in Foundry. I doubt that there will be many of you that are involved. So your team needs to be at least 1 person. There is no maximum size to how big the team can be. But if your team is probably more than 4, it looks a little odd, I'll be honest with you. And it's very doubtful that anybody past sort of 2 people are really participating. The largest team that we had last time was technically 4 people, but only 1 participated full time, and that was we knew that was the case. But it was this idea of 1 person who was being really well supported by 3 others who were really bought in to it. And obviously, if you're a PhD student or a master's student, if you're doing work in anybody else's lab, you do need to get permission, I think, to do this and to spend the time on it a little bit, especially if you're talking about research. And so the ideal setup is that you have this fantastic support from your supervisor and from anybody else. That's not necessarily always the case. That's totally fine. But that is quite a strong place to be in, we find. The second part to that, for the record, just going on a bit of a tangent here, is that if you are a researcher, something like Foundry is a really fantastic way for you to learn about and to get the network when it comes to commercialization, and to kind of dip your toes in the water in a low commitment way. And having a PhD student participate in Foundry is a really fantastic way for you to upskill your people and start to like bring that knowledge and that nous into the research group without you having to spend a bunch of time on a program. And we find that learning by osmosis is quite powerful as well. Okay, if you have a university project which is affiliated with a government organization such as CSIRO, would that be an issue? No, not at all. There are no limitations, is the TLDR. I can't think of a time when we've just been like looked at something and been like, well, can't do that because of X. If it's within the remit of you care a lot about it, you're really thinking about starting a company, you have a really compelling idea and a vision for the future that you want to explore, then that's really where we're at. That sounds great. Now there are a couple of questions here about IP and tooling. If the project like requires tooling, tools and resources can only be used for non-commercial purposes. I can't speak to the legal requirements of that from your organization standpoint. You'd have to talk to them. We're not making any claim over IP. There's no requirement over any of that. So as far as we're concerned, you're just spending time exploring the idea of starting a company. This is by all measures a non-commercial program. Like, we're not gaining anything for it. When it comes to the use of those tools, you'll have to discuss it with the organization that you're a part of. And I can't imagine that it would be an issue, but you'll have to talk to them. Is that fair, Tolo?
Yeah, absolutely. And equally, I would say most teams that have participated in the past have gotten almost all of the value out of non-experimental elements. So this is very much about framing the type of company you want to build, pushing your ambition, understanding what's possible, understanding the funding pathways. This program specifically is less about running a series of experiments over the course of the 8-week period. So if there are experiments that you want to run, but you're unsure whether you can run them during the Foundry program, don't discount yourself. Apply, join us. There's a heap of value and a heap of benefit that you can get, notwithstanding.
Good answer. Do we have a preference on who owns the IP? Does it matter if a university might own some of the IP? Once again, we really don't care about the IP. This program is not about the IP. It's a really different question if we're talking about like funding a company and we're talking about actually investing in a company. But for the purposes of Foundry, this is not an IP concerned program. This is a program that is concerned with how you start a company that is really interesting, that is doing really interesting things, how you build the networks to do that, how you fundraise, all of those kinds of things. You can see all of you can also we've written down all of our beliefs about intellectual property in universities. We wrote a manifesto about it. We go into quite significant detail about what we think is, what sorts of deals we like to see, what we think is appropriate, and what we need to see in order to fund a company. We've got some really, really good practical questions here. So final few, and then I have a couple that I want to make sure that we cover off. What are we looking for in teams and founders? Types of projects, prior experience, team size. Tolo.
Types of projects, a scale of consequence. So it's, you have a differentiated insight or a unique hypothesis about the world. Like, what's your unique take? If you turn out to be right, how does it dramatically change the experience of, for example, a customer, or delivering a drug to a particular class of, patients in need, unlocking, deploying a new enabling technology. So it's really about the kind of consequence on the other side of validating your hypothesis. So think about scale of ambition, scale of consequence. Founders, we talk about founders doing their life's work. We talk about wild hearts at Blackbird, but really it's, something that you're so deeply passionate about that you couldn't imagine not doing. Like, the founder's path is uncertain and in many cases challenging. And so, like, we really want to tool up and empower and believe in founders who have that will to push through the challenges, and for us to be there alongside them.
Absolutely true. I think we exist to, as Tolo said, back wild hearts with the wildest of ambitions. We talk about founders doing their life's work. It's got to be something that you really care about. We want to see that level of care and that level of insight in any application that we read. The applications that have been successful in the past have been those who have not necessarily a deep personal connection to the problem. I think that you can kind of like sometimes get a bit facetious with those things. But those that have a deep care for the problem, who have like gone deep into it, who have some unique insight, who have some thing that they see that nobody else does and have clarity over that, that's what we like to see. We're open to founders and teams of all compositions and all backgrounds, and we would like to see a real diversity of founders and teams. We like to really be challenged on the structures that we think look really good, and we're always open to be surprised to the upside. The thing that I would say really stands out in applications is those that have managed to break from the standard, call it grant writing structures and grant writing language, and have managed to come through with something that is like very simply written, compelling, does not waste space, so gets to the point really quickly, and is not generic as well. So no part of your application should really read like a sort of copy and paste from a grant app or from the intro of a paper. We really want to see that unique insight. Want to get to that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Types of project. Yeah, sorry, Tola, go.
Sorry, please continue.
No, you go.
Yeah, I think the other way I would frame it is, folks willing to share a courageous perspective. I think we talk a lot, yes, at Blackbird, but also more broadly about the hungry, not the proven. I think there are, plenty of people early on, relatively speaking, in their research or academic career, or, might even be yet to embark upon that, but they feel like they've discovered this secret about the world and they can't understand why no one else sees it. And I think it's those really unique, courageous perspectives that we would encourage you to share. I think many of the successful applications are made by people who are taking a bit of a chance. And so exactly that mindset that we love to support and encourage through this program.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. My favorite application last time, for the record, was like a couple of sentences in each, but just was just absolutely clear, and then backed it up really well with a couple of we've given you space to put references in and to send us on our own merry way to do our own research. You should make use of that. We read everything that comes through. It's a particularly fun time for me. I'm going to pull one of my own questions, and then we're going to jump back into the ones that exist. And just because I want us to cover this, what kind of support and resources are available to participants during and after the program? So during the program, we have the mentorship element, and you have basically unbridled access to Michael and to me, as well as access to anything that you can ask for. The limitation on Foundry is how well you ask and what you ask for. I would say that our networks are open. You have the full force of Blackbird support, basically, for the period of that 8 weeks. After the 8 weeks, we like to maintain really strong relationships with people. That's, I would say, probably 30% of the cohort we chat with on a really regular basis. And when people look to raise funding rounds, they come to us, and that's really fantastic. Blackbird has invested in a small handful of the companies that have come through, which is really fantastic. The ongoing participation is, again, the limit is what you ask for and what we can provide. So far, it looks a lot like introductions, continued access to our network, trust, advice on fundraising, on all things company related. You basically just have that continued access. But there's no formal ongoing alumni or programming at this point in time. that might change. Really good question here. For the record, shout out to Amy, who's just been asking fantastic questions. If your team is a bit time poor this year, during the 8 weeks of the cohort, would we be better applying for the next cohort? Will there be a 2025 program? So first, the minimum time commitment to Foundry is 4 hours a week for like one person in the team. If you can't handle 4 hours a week, I would say probably don't apply. You should apply. We can have a chat about it, but I would be questioning how much you actually have to spend on it. At the same time, I think you'll find, once again, because we're pretty flexible on timing and on the hybrid nature of things and on making things work, that probably can make the time work. We try not to take time. We don't take time out of lab hours, and we're super responsive to changes in scheduling and things like that. We understand the limitations on your time as students and researchers, and we try to work around that. Will there be a 2025 program? Yes, there will be a 2025 program. The program structure shifts a little bit every year and the timing shifts a little bit every year. So I don't think that will it's a super interesting point. Sorry, I need to stop getting distracted. There will be a 2025 program. The structure might change slightly. I can't speak to the exact nature of it because Foundry is itself a little bit of a startup and is constantly changing and iterating. Is the Foundry course complementary with something like CDL, or is there perhaps more overlap? It's definitely complementary. I wouldn't say that there is a lot of overlap. Foundry focuses on different things and is takes a slightly different approach, I would say, to creative destruction lab. But you can, and we have a really different structure in the sense that you don't have a team of mentors, you have a single mentor. We go for something more lightweight. The thing that CDL, I would say, does is it focuses a little further along the journey. So CDL is for slightly more de-risked startups and people who are already full-time on startups, whereas in Australia in particular, whereas we are really focusing on you haven't started something. It's the very early stages. You haven't raised capital. You don't really know how to do that. You're thinking about starting a startup. You have an idea. You want to figure out how to make it real. And you need to sort of bootstrap that network. That's what we do. We've got these 3 questions here, and then Amy, I might take this offline and we might have a chat about this instead, if that's okay. What percentage of interest does Blackbird typically come out with on a company that they fund? How is the share of interest determined? It's a super difficult question to answer. It varies immensely based on deal, based on stage. And I would say that we hit the standards for like US and international VCs pretty solidly. We benchmark to those rather than to the local ecosystem. So that is what I would say. Valuation depends on a huge number of factors. So this is a difficult question to answer. Is that a fair thing to say, Tolo?
Yes, we do have a rough guide in the manifesto that we published, but
we do.
I think beyond that, the specifics, will certainly, differ case by case. But I mean, that's a really great rule of thumb to apply.
True. Can someone without a PhD apply, but the startup is focused on using AI? Absolutely, you can always apply. The whole point is that we're open to all sorts of applications, really early stage. Doesn't have to be focused on AI. AI, I would actually say, is at the fringe of what we invest in when it comes to frontier and what Foundry is looking for when it comes to frontier tech. But you should absolutely throw in an application and we should have a chat. One last practical question. What's the time frame or timeline of the program? So all of the dates, the important dates are listed on the website. We will close applications in 10 days. I will be doing the hand-to-hand combat of making sure that people get applications across the line over the next 10 days. It's like my #1 priority. From there, we have a 1-week turnaround to going through those applications, getting in touch with follow-up questions or to chat with people and closing off that cohort, selecting the 10, and then making sure that our mentors are matched with our cohort really nicely. And then the exact day that we start, I believe, is a week or a fortnight after that. Let me double check. The program starts on August 12th, which is a week after that, and runs to October 8th. And that final comp day is in the week of whatever the week of October 4th is. And then we're done. So it does abut a little bit sort of conference season for a couple of different areas. But again, we're pretty flexible and work around things. So that should answer your question. Again, min is 4 hours a week throughout that time. 8-week program, pretty flexible on timing, but we are sticking to those dates. So you have to get in by July 26th. Okay, I think that does it. Michael, do you have any further questions that you want to make sure that we answer?
No, I think you've done a good job. But certainly if anyone has any follow-up questions, they should feel free to reach out.
My email address. Ooh, we lost you there. Sorry, might have been my internet.
Oh, good. No,
it was my internet. What did you say?
I was just saying, if anyone does have any follow-up questions, they should feel free to reach out to me or to you. I was then going to share the email address, but I think we're on the same wavelength there.
We were saying the same thing. How exciting. This is just a really great representation of how smoothly the Foundry program is going to run, because our team works so well together. Please feel free to reach out. We're always open for a chat. My Calendly is super open for people as well. If you have any further questions, or if you want to run details of an application by us, or get help at all, please just let us know. And I think that's it from us. Amy, I'm going to follow up separately. If you can send me an email, that would be fantastic, so that we can chat through the details of your question and commitment and what you're thinking of, because it sounds really interesting. Thank you all. Have a really wonderful rest of your day. Oh, apparently chat is disabled. Hold on. I'll find you, Obi. Don't worry. I've got it. Don't worry.